The morning sun came through the large windows of the film studio. Vin Diesel sat in his trailer, looking at 3 different movie scripts on the table in front of him. Each one promised action, explosions, and millions of dollars. Each one looked the same as the last movie he made. His assistant knocked on the door and walked in carrying 2 large boxes. "More fan mail," she said with a smile. "This is from the last 3 weeks," Vin nodded. He was tired, but he always tried to appreciate his fans. They were the reason he had this life. They bought tickets to his movies. They waited in long lines to meet him. They made him who he was. "Just put them on the chair," he said. "I will look at them later." The assistant placed the boxes down and left. Vin went back to reading the scripts, but his mind was not really there. He had been making action movies for over 20 years now. Fast cars, big fights, saving the world. He loved it, but lately something felt missing. He could not explain what it was. At lunchtime, he went to the set where they were filming. Cameras everywhere. Crew members running around, lights being adjusted. This was his world. He had worked so hard to get here. He remembered the days when nobody would give him a chance, when he was just another guy trying to make it in Hollywood. "Vin, we need you in 5 minutes," the director called out. He got into position. The scene was simple. He had to drive a car through a wall, jump out, and start fighting the bad guys. He had done scenes like this 100 times before. The cameras rolled. He did the scene perfectly. Everyone clapped. "Great job," the director said. "That is exactly what we needed." But Vin did not feel great. He felt like a machine doing the same thing over and over again. He smiled and thanked everyone, but inside he felt empty. That evening, he went back to his home in Los Angeles. It was a big house, beautiful and quiet. He lived alone most of the time. His family visited, but tonight it was just him. He made some dinner, watched a little television, and then remembered the boxes of fan mail. He brought them to his office and opened the first box. There were letters from all over the world: Italy, Japan, Brazil, Australia. Kids and adults all writing to tell him how much they loved his movies. Some wanted autographs, some wanted advice, some just wanted to say thank you. He read through them slowly. Each letter made him smile. There was a letter from a teenage boy in Canada who said Vin's movies helped him through his parents' divorce. There was a letter from a woman in Spain who said she watched his movies with her grandfather before he died. These letters reminded him why he did what he did. Then he saw an envelope that looked different from the others. It was not fancy. The paper was old and wrinkled, like it had been carried around for a long time. The handwriting was messy but careful. On the front, someone had written in blue pen, "Please read a father's request." There was no return address, no name on the outside, just those words. Vin held the envelope in his hands for a moment. Something about it felt important. He got a strange feeling in his chest, like this letter was different from all the others. He set it aside on his desk and continued reading the other letters. But his eyes kept going back to that envelope. After 20 minutes, he could not focus on anything else. He picked it up again and slowly opened it. Inside were 6 pages, handwritten on both sides. The paper was cheap notebook paper, the kind kids use in school. The handwriting was the same as on the envelope, sometimes hard to read but full of emotion. Vin could tell that whoever wrote this had put their whole heart into it. He started reading. The letter began. "Dear Mr. Diesel, you do not know me, and you probably get thousands of letters like this. But I am writing to you because I do not know who else to tell this to. My son does not talk much. He does not smile much. But when he watches your movies, he comes alive." Vin sat up straighter in his chair. He kept reading. The letter was from a father somewhere in the middle of America. A single dad trying to raise his son alone. The mother had left when the boy was very young. The father worked 2 jobs to pay the bills. But that was not the hard part, the letter explained. The hard part was that his son was different. The boy had autism. He did not understand the world the way other kids did. Loud noises scared him. Bright lights hurt his eyes. He did not have friends at school. He spent most of his time alone in his room. The father had tried everything. Doctors, therapists, special programs. Nothing seemed to help his son connect with the world. The boy lived in his own mind, far away from everyone else. Then one day the father put on one of Vin's movies. He did not expect much. He just wanted something to watch while his son was in the room. But something amazing happened. The boy stopped what he was doing. He looked at the television, his eyes focused on the screen. For the first time in months, he seemed interested in something outside his own head. Vin felt his throat get tight as he read. He put the letter down for a moment and took a deep breath. Then he picked it up and continued reading. The father wrote that his son watched that movie 5 times in 1 week. Then he wanted to watch all of Vin's other movies. The boy who barely spoke started saying lines from the films. He would repeat them over and over, practicing the way Vin said them. More importantly, the father wrote, his son started talking about family. In the Fast and Furious movies, Vin's character always talked about family being the most important thing. The boy connected with that idea. He started asking his father questions. He started showing emotions. You gave my son a voice, the father wrote. You helped him understand that being loyal and caring about people matters more than being perfect. Vin felt tears in his eyes. He had made so many movies, done so many stunts, said so many lines, but he had never thought about how his work might touch someone like this boy. The letter continued for several more pages. The father was not asking for money or favors. He was not even asking for an autograph. He just wanted Vin to know that his movies had changed a life. But then, near the end of the letter, the father wrote something that would stay with Vin forever. I wish there were more movies where heroes could be different. Where being strong did not just mean big muscles and guns. My son is strong in his own way, but he never sees heroes like himself. Maybe one day, someone will make a movie for kids like him. Vin finished reading and set the letter down on his desk. He stared at it for a long time. Outside his window, the city lights of Los Angeles sparkled in the dark. He had everything a person could want: fame, money, success. But this letter made him realize something. He had the power to do more than just entertain people. He could actually change lives. He could make a difference. He picked up the letter again and read it one more time from beginning to end. By the time he finished, it was past midnight. But Vin was not tired anymore. His mind was racing with ideas, questions, and possibilities. He did not know it yet, but that letter would change everything. Vin could not sleep that night. He kept thinking about the letter from the father. He kept thinking about the young boy who watched his movies over and over again. A boy who lived in his own world but somehow found a connection through action films about family and loyalty. At 3 a.m, he got out of bed and went back to his office. He turned on the small desk lamp and read the letter again. Each time he read it, he noticed something new. The father's handwriting got messier in some parts, like he was crying while he wrote. There were small water stains on the paper, probably from tears. The father had included small details about his son. The boy was 9 years old. His name was not mentioned in the letter, probably to protect his privacy. He loved the color blue. He did not like wearing shoes. He counted everything he saw, from ceiling tiles to cracks in the sidewalk. The father described how hard it was to take his son to public places. The grocery store was too loud. The mall was too bright. School was overwhelming. Other kids did not understand why the boy acted differently. They called him weird. They did not want to play with him. But at home, when it was just the father and son watching movies, everything was okay. The boy would sit on the couch, wrapped in his favorite blanket. He would rock back and forth gently, which helped him feel calm. And he would watch Vin's character on the screen, completely focused. The father wrote about a specific scene that his son loved the most. It was from one of the Fast and Furious movies. Vin's character was talking to his team, his chosen family. He said that it did not matter where you came from or who you were before. What mattered was being there for each other, being loyal, being true. The boy had watched that scene more than 100 times. He would rewind it and watch it again. He memorized every word. And then one day something incredible happened. The boy looked at his father and said, "We are family, right, Dad?" The father wrote that he started crying right there on the couch. Those were the first words his son had said to him in weeks. Not just repeated words from the movie, but a real question, asking for connection. "Yes, we are family," the father had answered. The boy smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "Like in the movie," the boy said. "Family is forever." From that day on, things started to change slowly. The boy still had hard days. He still got overwhelmed and scared. But he also started trying to communicate more. He started using words from the movies to express his feelings. When he was happy, he would say, "I live my life a quarter mile at a time," which was a famous line from the movies. When he was scared, he would say, "Ride or die," which meant he needed his father to stay close to him. The movies had given him a language, a way to connect with the world that made sense to him. Vin put the letter down and stared at the wall. He had been in this business for so long. He had worked with the biggest directors, the most famous actors. He had made billions of dollars for movie studios, but none of that felt as important as this one letter from this one father about this one special boy. He thought about his own life. He thought about how lucky he was. He could walk into any room and people knew who he was. He never had to worry about money. He never had to worry about people understanding him. But this boy had to fight every single day just to exist in a world that was not made for him. And somehow Vin's movies had helped him in that fight. The actor stood up and walked to the window. Dawn was starting to break over Los Angeles. The sky was turning from black to dark blue to light pink. A new day was beginning. He made a decision right then. He was going to do something about this. He did not know what yet, but he knew he could not just read this letter and forget about it. That would be wrong. Over the next few days, Vin found it hard to focus on work. He would be on the movie set doing his scenes, but his mind was somewhere else. His co-stars noticed something was different about him. "You okay, man?" one of them asked between takes. "You seem distracted." "I'm fine," Vin said. Just thinking about some stuff, but he was not fine. He was restless. He kept pulling out his phone and looking at pictures he had found online. Pictures about autism. Pictures of families with special needs children. Pictures of kids who looked different but had so much love and potential inside them. He started doing research late at night. He read articles about autism and how it affected millions of families around the world. He read about how these kids saw the world differently, how sounds were louder for them, how lights were brighter, how emotions were stronger. He read about how smart many of these kids were, but how hard it was for them to show it in ways that other people understood. He read about parents who fought every day to get their children the help they needed. Parents who never gave up even when they were exhausted and scared. The more he read, the more angry he became. Not angry at anyone specifically, but angry at how unfair it all was. These kids deserved better. They deserved to see themselves as heroes. They deserved to have movies and books and shows where people like them saved the day. He thought about every action movie he had ever made. Every hero he had played. They were all the same. Strong, confident, fearless, physically perfect. They never struggled with loud noises or bright lights. They never had trouble understanding social situations. They were not real in the way that this boy was real. One evening, he was having dinner with some friends from the industry. They were talking about upcoming projects, about box office numbers, about what movies would win awards. Vin was quiet, just listening. Then one of his friends asked him, "What is your next project? I heard you got offered 3 big action movies. Which one are you going to do?" Vin looked down at his plate. He had been offered those movies. Good money, big studios, guaranteed success. But none of them excited him anymore. "I do not know yet," he finally said. "I am thinking about doing something different." His friends laughed. "Different? You are the action guy. That is your brand. Why would you change that now?" "Maybe because there is more to life than doing the same thing over and over," Vin said quietly. His friends looked at each other confused. They did not understand what was happening with him, but Vin did not expect them to understand. This was something personal, something he needed to figure out on his own. That night he took out the letter again. He had read it so many times now that he had parts of it memorized. He knew the father's words by heart. But he read it again anyway, slowly, carefully. Near the end of the letter, the father had written his phone number. "I do not expect you to call," he had written. "I know you are busy and important, but if you ever want to talk or if you ever want to meet my son, we would be honored." Vin stared at that phone number for a long time. Should he call? Would it be weird? The father said he did not expect it, so maybe Vin would just be bothering them. But then he thought about the boy. He thought about how much his movies had meant to this kid. He thought about how a simple phone call might make that boy's whole year, maybe his whole life. He picked up his phone and dialed the number before he could change his mind. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Vin started to think maybe nobody would answer. Maybe the number was wrong. Maybe the father had changed his mind about wanting contact. Then someone picked up. "Hello?" A man's voice, tired but kind. "Hi," Vin said. This is Vin Diesel. I got your letter. There was silence on the other end. Then he heard the man's breath catch. Oh my God, the father whispered. I cannot believe you actually called. I had to, Vin said. Your letter. It touched me deeply. I have been thinking about it every day since I read it. The father's voice broke. I did not think you would even see it. I thought it would just get lost with all the other mail. It almost did, Vin admitted. But something made me pick it up. Something made me read it, and I am so glad I did. They talked for over an hour. The father told him more stories about his son, about the struggles and the victories, about the days when nothing went right and the days when everything clicked, about how much the boy loved Vin's movies and how they had changed their lives. Vin told the father about his own struggles growing up, about feeling different, about not fitting in, about having to fight for everything he got. He realized that while his experience was not the same as the boys, he understood what it felt like to be an outsider. Can I meet him? Vin finally asked. Your son. I would really like to meet him. The father was quiet for a moment. Are you serious? Completely serious. He would. That would mean everything to him. To both of us, they made plans to meet. The father lived in Ohio, which was far from Los Angeles, but Vin did not care. He would fly there himself. He would make time, no matter how busy his schedule was. When he hung up the phone, Vin felt something he had not felt in years. He felt purpose. He felt like he was about to do something that actually mattered. He looked at the letter one more time before putting it carefully in his desk drawer. He would keep it forever. This letter had changed something inside him. It had opened his eyes to a whole world of people he had never really thought about before, and now he could not stop thinking about them. Vin walked into the big conference room at the studio feeling nervous. He had been in hundreds of meetings before, but this one felt different. This one mattered more than any deal he had ever made. Around the table sat 5 executives from the studio. These were the people who decided which movies got made and which ones did not. They controlled millions of dollars. They had the power to make his dream happen or shut it down completely. Vin, good to see you, the head executive said, shaking his hand. We hear you have an exciting new project to pitch to us. Vin nodded and opened his laptop. He had prepared a whole presentation. Pictures, research, story ideas, everything. He had worked on it for 3 weeks straight, barely sleeping. Thank you for meeting with me, Vin began. I want to talk to you about a different kind of action movie. A movie about a hero who is neurodivergent, specifically autistic. He saw the executives exchange glances. Not good glances, uncomfortable glances. The story follows a former soldier who has autism, Vin continued, trying to ignore their reactions. He has incredible abilities. He can detect patterns nobody else sees. He can hear things nobody else hears. His different way of processing the world makes him the perfect person to solve a major crime that nobody else can solve. Interesting, one executive said. But her voice did not sound interested at all. Vin showed them his research. He explained how millions of families were affected by autism. He showed them statistics about how much money these families spent on movies and entertainment. He explained that there was a huge audience waiting for a movie like this. But here's the key, Vin said, his passion showing. This is not a movie about autism. This is an action movie where the main character happens to be autistic. He is a hero first. His autism is part of who he is, but it does not define him. He talked for 20 minutes, showing them everything he had prepared. When he finished, there was silence in the room. Finally, the head executive spoke. Vin, we appreciate your passion. We really do. But we have some concerns. What concerns? Vin asked. Well, first of all, will audiences accept an autistic action hero? People go to action movies to see strong, capable heroes. They want to escape from reality, not be reminded of difficult issues. Vin felt his jaw tighten. Autistic people are strong and capable. That is the whole point. We understand that. Another executive said quickly, but the general public might not see it that way. They might see it as a disability movie, not an action movie. That is a much smaller market. It is only a smaller market because nobody has made a good movie like this before, Vin argued. Give audiences a chance. They are smarter than you think. Maybe, the head executive said. But we are talking about investing $100 million or more. That is a big risk for an experimental movie. Experimental? Vin could not believe what he was hearing. Making a movie with a diverse character is not experimental. It is overdue. A woman executive leaned forward. Vin, let me ask you something. How do you plan to show this character's autism without making it depressing or off-putting? Audiences want to have fun at action movies. They do not want to feel sad or uncomfortable. The character will not be depressing, Vin said firmly. He will be powerful. He will save the day. Yes, he will have challenges, but everyone has challenges. His just happen to be different from what people usually see. The executives looked at each other again. Vin could tell they were not convinced. What if we compromise? One of them suggested. What if we make the character have some quirks, but we do not specifically say he is autistic? That way we get the diversity you want without limiting our audience. Vin shook his head. No, that is the problem right there. People always want to water things down, make them more comfortable, but that does not help anyone. We need to be honest and direct. We hear you, the head executive said, standing up. Give us some time to think about it. We will get back to you. The meeting ended. Vin left feeling frustrated and disappointed. He had expected some resistance, but not this much. Not this kind of immediate dismissal. Over the next week, he had meetings with his own team. His agent, his manager, his publicist. They all had the same concerns as the studio executives. You are at the peak of your career right now, his agent said. You can do any action movie you want. Why risk that on something so different? Because it matters, Vin said simply. But does it matter to your brand? His publicist asked. You are known as the tough action guy. The family man. The car guy. This autism movie does not fit that image. Maybe my image needs to change, Vin said. His manager sighed. Vin, I have been with you for 15 years. I have seen you build this career from nothing. Do not throw it away on one movie that might not work. I am not throwing anything away, Vin said, his voice getting louder. I am trying to do something meaningful. When did that become a bad thing? Nobody had a good answer for that. He talked to some of his actor friends too, looking for support. Most of them were supportive but cautious. It is a great idea in theory, one friend said. But Hollywood is a business. They only care about money. If you want to make this movie, you are going to have to prove it will make money. How do I prove that? Vin asked. Nobody has made a movie like this before. There is no precedent. Exactly. That is the problem. Another friend was more blunt. Look, man, I love you. But this sounds like career suicide. You are going to alienate your core audience and maybe not even win over the new audience you are trying to reach. Is it really worth it? Vin went home that night feeling defeated. Everyone was against this project. Everyone thought he was making a mistake. He sat in his office and took out the letter from the father. He read it again, reminding himself why this mattered. The boy in Ohio did not care about box office numbers or brand image. He just wanted to see himself as a hero. His phone rang. It was the head executive from the studio. Vin, we have been discussing your project, the man said. We like your passion, we really do. But we cannot make the movie as you described it. Vin felt his heart sink. Why not? Too risky. Too niche. But we have a counteroffer. We will make an action movie with you, and we can include a supporting character who is on the autism spectrum. Maybe a tech guy who helps your main character. That way we get some of the representation you want without making the whole movie about it. A supporting character, Vin repeated flatly. Yes. A smart computer hacker or something. Audiences love that. It is a win-win. It is not a win-win, Vin said, trying to keep his voice calm. It is the same thing Hollywood always does. Put diverse characters in the background where they are safe and non-threatening. I want the hero to be autistic. That is just not going to work for us, the executive said. I am sorry. What if I take less money? Vin asked suddenly. What if I do the movie for half my usual salary? Would you make it then? There was a pause. We would still have concerns about marketability. What if we market it as a mystery thriller instead of just an action movie? Vin suggested, thinking fast. We emphasize the detective aspect, the puzzle solving, the unique perspective. We do not lead with the autism in the advertising, but it is clearly in the movie itself. Maybe, the executive said slowly, but we would need a really strong script, something that proves this can work. Give me 3 months, Vin said. Let me develop the script. If you do not like it, fine. But at least give me a chance, the executive sighed. 3 months. But Vin, you should be thinking about your other offers. Do not put all your eggs in this basket. After he hung up, Vin sat in silence. 3 months to write a perfect script. 3 months to prove that Hollywood was wrong. 3 months to change everything. It felt impossible. But then he thought about the boy again. The boy who had no heroes who looked like him. The boy who lived in a world that did not understand him. That boy was fighting every single day just to exist. Surely Vin could fight too. He called the father in Ohio. "How is your son doing?" "Good. He asks about you every day. When is the famous car man coming to visit?" Vin smiled despite his frustration. "Soon, very soon." "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. If I make this movie, even if it is really hard, even if everyone says it is a bad idea, it would be worth it, right? It would matter to kids like your son?" The father's voice became thick with emotion. "Vin, if you make this movie, you will change lives. Not just my son's life. Thousands of lives. Maybe millions. Kids who have never seen themselves as strong or capable or heroic will finally have someone to look up to." "Okay," Vin said quietly. "That is all I needed to hear." He hung up and opened a new document on his computer. At the top he typed, "Untitled Autism Action Project Draft 1. Then he started writing. The studio had given him 3 months, but he was going to do it in 2. He was going to write the best script of his life. He was going to prove everyone wrong. The words came slowly at first. He had never written a full screenplay before, but he thought about everything he had learned. He thought about the people he had talked to. He thought about the boy in Ohio. His main character started to take shape. A man in his 30s, former military, brilliant but misunderstood, someone who saw the world differently and used that difference to save lives. Not a superhero, not a genius stereotype, just a real person with real struggles and real strengths. Vin wrote through the night. When the sun came up, he had 20 pages. It was not perfect, but it was a start. Over the next several weeks, he barely slept. He wrote every free moment he had. Between takes on the movie set, he would go to his trailer and write. Late at night after dinner, he would write. Early in the morning before the sun rose, he would write. His assistant brought him coffee and meals. His friends stopped calling because he never had time to talk. His agent sent worried emails asking if he was okay. But Vin could not stop. This script had to be perfect. It had to prove that this movie could work. It had to show that autistic heroes belonged on the big screen just as much as any other heroes. After 8 weeks, he had a complete first draft. He read through it, made some changes, and sent it to a professional screenwriter friend for notes. The friend called him 2 days later. "Vin, this is really good." "Raw but good. The heart is there, but," Vin asked, hearing the hesitation, "but you need help polishing it. This is your first screenplay. You need someone who knows structure and pacing. Someone who can make it commercial without losing the message." Vin knew his friend was right. He reached out to several screenwriters, but most of them were too busy or not interested in the project. Finally, he found someone. A writer who had done several successful action movies but also had a personal connection to autism. Her brother was autistic and she had always wanted to tell a story like this. "I will do it," she said immediately, "but I want creative control over the dialogue and structure. You focus on the heart and the authenticity." "Deal," Vin said. They worked together for the next month, refining the script. It was hard work. They argued about scenes and character choices. But slowly the script became something special. With 1 week left before his deadline, Vin had a finished script. It was 120 pages of action, heart, and hope. It was everything he wanted to say about autism, heroism, and acceptance. He sent it to the studio executives and waited. The next few days felt like the longest of his life. Finally, his phone rang. It was the head executive. "Vin, we read your script." Vin held his breath, and there was a long pause. Too long. The executive's voice on the phone was careful, measured. "The script is interesting. It is different. But we still have concerns about the commercial viability." Vin closed his eyes. Another rejection. Another excuse. "What would it take?" he asked quietly. "What would it take for you to say yes?" "Honestly, we would need to see proof that there is an audience for this. We would need a director who can handle both action and sensitive subject matter, and we would need to keep the budget reasonable, under $50 million. After the call ended, Vin sat in his office feeling defeated. But only for a moment. Then something inside him shifted. If the studio would not believe in this project, he would make them believe. He would find the proof they needed. He called his team together. His agent, his manager, his publicist, and a few close friends who worked in the industry. He told them what the studio had said. "So what is the plan?" his manager asked. "We are going to develop this project independently," Vin said. "We are going to bring in consultants from the autism community. We are going to find the perfect director. We are going to build something so good that the studio cannot say no. That is going to cost money," his agent pointed out. "A lot of money, I know. I will pay for it myself." Everyone in the room stared at him. Using your own money to develop a project that might never get made was risky. "Very risky. Are you sure about this?" his publicist asked. "I have never been more sure about anything," Vin replied. Over the next few weeks, Vin assembled a small team. He hired 3 consultants who were autistic adults and worked as advocates. He wanted their input on every part of the script to make sure it was authentic and respectful. The first meeting with the consultants was eye-opening. They sat in Vin's office and he gave them the script to read. He was nervous. What if they hated it? What if everything he had written was wrong? After an hour, they finished reading. One of the consultants, a woman in her 40s, spoke first. "This is really good. You clearly did your research." Vin felt relief wash over him. "Really?" "Yes, but there are some things we need to fix. Some small details that are not quite right." For the next 3 hours, they went through the script page by page. They pointed out where the characters' reactions did not feel authentic. They explained where the dialogue could be better. They shared their own experiences to help Vin understand how to improve the story. One consultant, a man in his 30s, said something that stuck with Vin. "The biggest mistake people make is showing autistic characters as either completely helpless or magical geniuses with no in-between. Your character is neither of those extremes, which is good, but make sure he has flaws that are not related to his autism. He needs to be a complete person." Vin took notes on everything. He rewrote scenes based on their feedback. The script got better and better with each revision. While working on the script, Vin also started looking for a director. He needed someone who understood action movies but also had a sensitive touch for character-driven drama, someone who would respect the autism community and tell this story right. He met with 15 different directors over 2 months. Some were interested but wanted to change too much. Some did not understand the vision. Some were perfect, except they were already committed to other projects. Then he met with a director named Sarah Chen. She had done 2 successful action movies and 1 small independent film about a deaf teenager. She was known for her visual style and her ability to get great performances from actors. "Why do you want to make this movie?" Vin asked her during their meeting. Sarah thought for a moment. "Because I am tired of seeing the same heroes over and over again. I am tired of action movies that are just loud noise with no heart. This script has both. It is exciting and meaningful. That is rare." "Do you have any personal connection to autism?" Vin asked. "My nephew is autistic," Sarah said. "He is 7 years old. Brilliant kid. Loves building things. But the world is so hard for him sometimes. When his mom told me what you were trying to do with this movie, I knew I had to be part of it." Vin smiled. "When can you start?" "Right now." With Sarah on board, the project felt more real. They worked together to refine the script even more. Sarah had great ideas about how to show the characters different sensory experiences visually. She suggested using camera techniques and sound design to let the audience feel what the character felt. "We do not want to just tell people he has autism," Sarah explained. "We want them to experience the world through his eyes, to understand why certain things are hard and why certain things are easier for him than for other people." It was brilliant. Vin had not thought about using filmmaking techniques in that way before. But there was still one very important thing Vin needed to do. He needed to meet the boy who had inspired all of this. The boy from Ohio who had written the letter with his father. Vin flew to Ohio on a Thursday morning. He rented a car and drove to the small town where the father and son lived. He was nervous. What if the boy did not like him? What if meeting in person was too overwhelming? The father had warned him that his son might not react the way Vin expected. He probably will not hug you or get super excited like kids usually do when they meet someone famous. He might not even look at you much, but that does not mean he does not care. He just shows emotions differently. Vin understood. He had learned so much over the past few months. He pulled up to a small house on a quiet street. Before he could even get out of the car, the front door opened. The father stepped out looking nervous and excited at the same time. "You came," he said, as if he still could not believe it. "Of course I came," Vin said, shaking his hand. "My son is inside. I told him someone special was coming to visit. He does not really understand who you are, but he knows something is happening. Vin followed the father into the house. It was small but clean and comfortable. Toys were scattered around the living room. On the wall were several posters from Vin's movies, and there, sitting on the couch wrapped in a blue blanket, was the boy. He was rocking gently back and forth. He did not look up when Vin walked in. His eyes were focused on his hands, which he was moving in a pattern over and over. "Hey, buddy," the father said softly. "Remember I told you someone special was coming? This is him. This is the car man from your movies." The boy glanced up for just a second, then went back to looking at his hands. Vin did not take it personally. He sat down on the floor, not too close to the boy, giving him space. "Hi," Vin said quietly. "Your dad told me you like my movies." The boy did not respond. He just kept rocking and moving his hands. The father looked apologetic. "He is having a quiet day. Sometimes he is more verbal than other times." "It is okay," Vin said. He just sat there, not pushing, not demanding attention. After a few minutes, he started reciting a famous line from one of his movies. "I live my life a quarter mile at a time." The boy stopped moving his hands. He looked at Vin, really looked at him for the first time. "Quarter mile," the boy repeated softly. "That is right," Vin said, smiling. "Family," the boy said, which was another word from the movies. "Family is forever." "Yes, it is," Vin agreed. For the next hour, Vin sat with the boy. They did not talk much. Mostly, the boy recited lines from movies, and Vin responded. Sometimes the boy would show Vin his toys, lining them up in specific patterns. Sometimes he would just sit quietly, rocking. It was not like any meet and greet Vin had ever done before. But it was perfect in its own way. He was seeing the real boy, not a performance. He was being trusted with something precious. At one point, the boy went to his room and came back with a stack of drawings. He handed them to Vin without making eye contact. The drawings were incredible. They were all pictures of cars and people from the movies. Every detail was perfect, drawn from memory. Some of the drawings showed the boy himself standing next to Vin's character, both of them looking brave and strong. "Did you draw these?" Vin asked, his voice thick with emotion. The boy nodded. "They are amazing. You are a real artist." The boy smiled just a little. It was the most beautiful smile Vin had ever seen. Before leaving, the father walked Vin outside. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for coming all this way. Thank you for caring about my son. Thank you for writing that letter," Vin replied. "You changed my life. You opened my eyes to something I needed to see." "Are you really going to make the movie?" the father asked. "The one about a hero like my son?" "I am going to do everything in my power to make it happen," Vin promised. "Your son deserves to see himself as a hero. Every kid like him deserves that." The father started crying. "You have no idea what that means to us. To all of us." Vin gave him a hug, then got in his car. As he drove away, he looked in the rearview mirror. The boy was standing at the window, watching him leave. He raised one hand in a small wave. Vin waved back, tears running down his face. On the flight back to Los Angeles, Vin thought about the visit. The boy had been so pure, so genuine. He did not care about fame or money or what other people thought. He just wanted to feel understood and represented. That was what this movie needed to be. Not a big Hollywood statement. Not an Oscar bait drama. Just a good story about a hero who happened to be different. When he got home, he gathered all the drawings the boy had given him. He framed one of them and hung it in his office. It was the drawing of the boy and the hero standing together. Every time he looked at it, he would remember why he was fighting so hard for this project. The next week, he met with Sarah and the consultants again. He told them about his visit to Ohio. He showed them the drawings. Everyone was moved. "We have to make this movie," Sarah said firmly. "Not for the studio. Not for ourselves. For that boy and every kid like him." "Then let us make it perfect," Vin said. "Let us build something so good that nobody can say no." They worked for 3 more months, refining every detail. The script went through 12 revisions. Sarah created a visual presentation showing how key scenes would look. The consultants helped develop a list of autistic actors who could play supporting roles. Vin also started documenting everything. He filmed interviews with families affected by autism. He gathered statistics about the autism community and their spending power. He collected letters from parents thanking him for even trying to make a movie like this. He was building a case, proof that this movie was needed and wanted. Finally, they had everything ready. The perfect script, the right director, authentic consultants, supporting evidence. All they needed was for the studio to say yes. Vin called the head executive and asked for one more meeting. "Give me 1 hour. That is all I ask. After that, if you still say no, I will walk away." There was a pause. Then the executive said, 1 hour. Next Tuesday. "But Vin, do not get your hopes up." "My hopes are already up," Vin said, "and I am not giving up." He spent the next few days preparing his presentation. This was his last chance. He had to make it count. On Tuesday morning, he walked into that same conference room where he had been rejected months before. But this time he was ready. This time he had everything he needed to change their minds. This time he was going to win. The conference room was silent as Vin set up his laptop. The same 5 executives sat around the table, their faces showing polite interest but also skepticism. They had heard his pitch before. They did not expect to hear anything new, but Vin had something they had not seen. Something that would change everything. "Thank you for giving me this time," Vin began. "I know you have doubts about this project. I understand your concerns about risk and marketability, but today I'm going to show you why those concerns are wrong." He pressed a button on his laptop. The large screen on the wall lit up with statistics and graphs. "There are over 5 million people with autism just in the United States," Vin said. "That is 5 million potential audience members. Add in their families, friends, teachers, therapists, and supporters, and you are looking at over 20 million people who have a direct connection to autism." One executive leaned forward, interested despite herself. "Go on." "These families spend billions of dollars every year on therapy, education, and yes, entertainment. But Hollywood has ignored them. There are almost no mainstream movies with autistic heroes. Families are starving for representation. We have a chance to be the first studio to give them what they want." He clicked to the next slide. It showed letters from parents all thanking him for even attempting this project. There were hundreds of them. "These are just a fraction of the messages I have received since word got out about this movie. Parents telling me their kids need this. Adults with autism telling me they have waited their whole lives to see themselves as heroes. This is not a niche audience. This is an underserved market that is ready to be reached." The head executive was taking notes now. Vin could see him doing mental calculations, thinking about the money. "But here is what makes this more than just a good business decision," Vin continued. "This movie will generate enormous positive press. Every major news outlet will want to cover it. Every disability rights organization will support it. This will not just be a movie. It will be a cultural moment." He clicked to another slide showing Sarah Chen's credentials. "I have attached an acclaimed director who has proven she can handle both action and character depth. We have a polished script that has been reviewed and approved by multiple autism consultants. We have a plan to cast autistic actors in supporting roles, which will add authenticity and generate even more positive attention." The executives were listening more carefully now. Vin could feel the energy in the room shifting. "Now about the budget," Vin said. "You mentioned keeping it under 50 million. I am prepared to take a significant pay cut. Instead of my usual 20 million, I will take 5 million upfront and back-end points. That frees up 15 million in the budget right there." The head executive's eyebrows raised. Actors never volunteered to take less money. This showed how serious Vin was. "We can shoot in practical locations instead of building expensive sets," Vin continued. "We can use emerging technology for the action sequences instead of traditional expensive methods. Director Sarah has already identified ways to make this movie look like an $80 million film, while spending only 40 million. He could see he was winning them over, but he needed one more thing. One final push to seal the deal. "There is someone I want you to meet," Vin said. "Or rather, someone I want you to see." He pressed play on a video file. On the screen appeared the boy from Ohio, sitting on his couch wrapped in his blue blanket. His father was behind the camera. "This is the boy who inspired this project," Vin narrated. "His father wrote me a letter about how my movies helped his son communicate and connect with the world." In the video, the father asked his son a question. "What would it mean to you if there was a movie about a hero who was like you? A hero who had autism?" The boy thought for a long moment, rocking gently. Then he looked up at the camera, making direct eye contact for just a second. "It would mean I am not alone," the boy said quietly. "It would mean I can be strong too." The video ended. There was complete silence in the conference room. One of the female executives was wiping her eyes. "That is why this movie matters," Vin said softly. Not for box office numbers or award consideration. For kids like him who have never seen themselves reflected as powerful and capable. For families who have fought so hard for so long without recognition or support. He clicked to his final slide. It was the drawing the boy had made, showing himself standing next to a hero. Both of them looking brave and strong. "I am not asking you to make this movie out of charity," Vin said. "I am asking you to make it because it is good business and the right thing to do. Those two things do not have to be separate." The head executive sat back in his chair. He looked at his colleagues, then back at Vin. "Can you give us the room for a few minutes?" "Of course," Vin said. He saved his presentation, closed his laptop, and walked out. He stood in the hallway, his heart pounding. He had given them everything he had. If they said no now, it was over. He would have to find a different studio, which could take months or years. The project might never happen. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Vin paced back and forth, unable to stand still. Finally, the door opened. The head executive gestured for him to come back in. Vin walked in and sat down. He tried to read their faces but could not. "That was quite a presentation," the head executive said. "Thank you," Vin replied, his voice steady even though inside he was shaking. "We have been discussing your proposal. We have concerns, but you have addressed many of them. The pay cut helps significantly. Having Sarah Chen attached is a big plus. The market research you showed is compelling." "So?" Vin could barely breathe. The executive looked around at his colleagues. They all nodded. He turned back to Vin. "We are going to greenlight the project." Vin felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. "What?" "We are saying yes," the executive repeated with a small smile. $45 million budget. You take your reduced salary. Sarah directs. We want at least 2 autistic actors in supporting roles, and we want heavy involvement from the autism consultants throughout production. Yes, Vin said immediately. Yes to all of it. There is one more condition, the executive said. We want documentary cameras following the production. We think the behind-the-scenes story of making this film could be powerful. It could help with marketing and could even be its own project later. Vin nodded eagerly. Absolutely. Whatever you need. They shook hands. Vin signed some preliminary paperwork. As he left the building an hour later, he could barely process what had just happened. After months of fighting and doubt and setbacks, it was actually happening. He sat in his car and called the father in Ohio. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. Hello? We got the green light, Vin said, his voice breaking with emotion. We are making the movie. The father started crying immediately. Oh my God, are you serious? Completely serious. Production starts in 4 months. I want you and your son to be part of this. I want you on set. I want your input. This is his story as much as it is mine. Thank you, the father sobbed. Thank you so much. After hanging up, Vin just sat in his car for a long time, letting the reality sink in. He had done it. He had actually done it. His phone started buzzing with messages. Word was already spreading through Hollywood. His agent, his manager, his friends, all congratulating him. Sarah sent a message in all capital letters. We are making history. Over the next few weeks, everything moved fast. The studio issued a press release announcing the project. The response was overwhelming. News outlets wanted interviews. Disability rights organizations released statements of support. Parents flooded social media with messages of excitement and gratitude. There was some negative reaction too. A few critics said Vin was exploiting autism for publicity. Some people questioned whether a neurotypical actor should play an autistic character. There were debates about representation and authenticity. Vin expected this. He met with the consultants to discuss how to address the concerns. They decided to be transparent about everything. They would document the process. They would listen to criticism and adjust when needed. They would make sure autistic voices were centered in every decision. We are not going to get everything perfect, one consultant told Vin, but if we are honest about our process and genuinely try to do right by the community, most people will see that. Casting began. Sarah and Vin decided they wanted to cast autistic actors for several key supporting roles. This was not common in Hollywood and it presented challenges. Many talented autistic actors had trouble with traditional auditions, which involved lots of eye contact and quick verbal responses. So they changed the audition process. They allowed actors to submit video auditions from home. They provided scripts in advance so people could prepare. They made the audition room quiet and comfortable with dim lighting and no pressure. Slowly, they found amazing talent. A young autistic man who could play the main character's brother. An autistic woman who could play a brilliant scientist. These actors brought authenticity that no neurotypical actor could fake. For the main role, Vin's character, they did cast a neurotypical actor after much discussion, but that actor worked extensively with autism consultants to ensure his portrayal was respectful and accurate. He spent time with autistic adults, learning their mannerisms and experiences not to mimic them but to understand them. Pre-production took 3 months. Every detail was carefully considered. The costume designer worked with consultants to choose fabrics that would be comfortable for someone with sensory sensitivities. The set designer made sure lighting could be adjusted for scenes showing sensory overload. The sound team developed innovative techniques to let the audience experience heightened hearing. The father and son from Ohio visited the set several times during pre-production. The boy was overwhelmed at first by all the activity, but he loved seeing how movies were made. Vin made sure there was always a quiet room available where the boy could go if things got too intense. One day, the boy was watching them rehearse a scene. When they finished, he walked up to Vin and handed him a new drawing. It showed Vin's character saving a child who looked like the boy. At the bottom, in careful handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for making me a hero." Vin kept that drawing with him every day of filming. Whenever he felt tired or doubted himself, he would look at it and remember why this mattered. The first day of principal photography arrived. There was excitement and nervousness on set. Everyone knew they were making something special, something that could change how Hollywood told stories. Vin stood in front of the camera, ready to begin. Sarah called action, and he delivered his first line as this new kind of hero, a hero who was strong not despite his differences but because of them. As the camera rolled, Vin thought about the letter that had started all of this. A simple handwritten letter from a father who loved his son and wanted the world to see what he saw. That letter had traveled across the country, landed in a pile of fan mail, and changed everything. Sometimes, Vin realized, the most important messages come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, if you are brave enough to listen, those messages can change not just your life but the lives of millions of people you will never meet. The movie was not just a film anymore. It was a promise. A promise to every child who had ever felt different or alone. A promise that they were seen, valued, and capable of greatness. And Vin was going to keep that promise, no matter what it took. 18 months after that first letter arrived in Vin's pile of fan mail, the movie was finished. The final edit was complete. The sound mixing was done. The visual effects were locked. It was time to show it to the world. The studio planned a big premiere in Los Angeles. Red carpet, searchlights, cameras everywhere. But Vin had one request that was non-negotiable. "I want a special screening first," he told the studio executives, "for families in the autism community. Before the press sees it, before the celebrities see it. They should be the first audience," the studio agreed. They rented a theater and invited 300 families who had children with autism. No press, no cameras, no spectacle. Just families who needed this movie. The night of that screening, Vin stood in the lobby of the theater watching families arrive. Parents looked hopeful and nervous. Some children wore noise-canceling headphones. Some carried favorite toys or blankets for comfort. Some were excited, some were anxious. The father and son from Ohio were there too. The boy was now 10 years old, a little taller than when Vin first met him. He was wearing a shirt with race cars on it and holding his father's hand tightly. "Ready to see the movie?" Vin asked the boy. The boy nodded but did not make eye contact. "Car man made a movie about me," he said softly. "About heroes like you," Vin corrected gently. Strong, brave heroes. They went into the theater. Vin had made sure the volume was not too loud and the lights were not too bright. There were quiet rooms in the back where families could go if anyone needed a break. There were sensory-friendly fidget toys available. Everything was designed to make this screening comfortable. The lights dimmed. The movie began. Vin sat in the back row, too nervous to focus on the screen. Instead, he watched the audience. He saw kids who were usually restless sitting completely still, absorbed in the story. He saw parents crying as they watched their children see themselves represented as powerful and capable for the first time. The main character in the movie was named Daniel. He was a former soldier who had autism. In the story, a series of crimes were happening that nobody could solve. The police brought in Daniel because his ability to notice patterns and details that others missed made him the perfect detective. But Daniel was not just defined by his autism. He had a sense of humor. He loved his family. He made mistakes. He felt scared sometimes. He was a complete person, not a stereotype or inspiration symbol. The movie showed his challenges honestly. There was a scene in a crowded marketplace where the noise and chaos became overwhelming for him. The sound design made the audience feel what Daniel felt. Every sound amplified, every light too bright, everything too much all at once. Some kids in the audience covered their ears during that scene, nodding along because they understood exactly what Daniel was experiencing. But the movie also showed his strengths. Daniel solved the mystery using his unique way of seeing the world. His attention to detail saved lives. His loyalty to his team made him a true hero. And at the end, when he succeeded, it was not despite his autism, but because he was exactly who he was meant to be. The movie was 2 hours long. Not a single family left early. When the credits rolled, there was silence for a moment. Then the applause started. It grew louder and louder until everyone in the theater was standing, clapping, many of them crying. Vin stood up too, his own eyes wet with tears. Sarah Chen grabbed his hand and squeezed it. They had done it. They had really done it. After the screening, families came up to thank him. A mother with 2 autistic sons told him that her boys had never made it through a full movie in a theater before, but they had watched every minute of this one. A teenage girl who was autistic told him this was the first time she had ever seen herself as a hero in a movie. The boy from Ohio came up with his father. He looked at Vin, made brief eye contact, and said, "Good movie, strong hero, like me." Vin knelt down to be at the boy's level. "Exactly like you," he said. "You are a hero, buddy. Never forget that." The boy smiled, then went back to his father. The father shook Vin's hand, too emotional to speak. No words were needed. The official premiere happened a week later. This time it was all Hollywood glamour. Movie stars, directors, industry executives, press from around the world. The red carpet stretched for a block. Photographers shouted for attention. It was everything a big premiere should be. But what made this premiere different was who else was there. Mixed in with the celebrities were autism advocates, special education teachers, disability rights activists, and families from the autism community. The boy from Ohio walked the red carpet with Vin, wearing a little suit and looking overwhelmed but proud. The press loved the story. Every interview Vin did, he talked about the letter that had inspired everything. He talked about the boy. He talked about why representation mattered. He talked about how autism was not something to fix or cure, but a different way of being human that deserved respect and celebration. The movie released nationwide the following Friday. The studio had been nervous about how it would perform at the box office. Action movies usually opened big, but would audiences show up for an action movie with an autistic hero? They did. In huge numbers. The movie opened at number 1, making over $60 million in its first weekend. But more importantly, theaters reported something unusual. Families were coming back to see it multiple times. Groups from autism support organizations were buying out entire screenings. The movie was not just successful, it was becoming a movement. Reviews were mostly positive. Critics praised the action sequences, the thoughtful representation, and the heart of the story. A few critics complained that it was too sentimental, or that a neurotypical actor should not have played the autistic lead. But even those critics acknowledged the movie was important. Social media exploded with reactions. Autistic adults shared their thoughts, most of them positive. They appreciated that the movie showed both challenges and strengths. They liked that Daniel was not a superhuman genius or a helpless child, but a complex adult with agency and depth. Parents posted videos of their children's reactions to seeing the movie. Kids who usually struggled with new experiences were asking to see it again and again. They were playing the hero character at home, finally able to imagine themselves in that role. One video went viral. It showed a 9-year-old autistic boy watching the scene where Daniel overcomes his sensory overload and solves the case. When the scene ended with Daniel succeeding, the boy stood up in the theater and cheered. His mother, filming from behind, could be heard crying with joy. The movie stayed in theaters for months. It made over $400 million worldwide, far more than anyone expected. But the financial success was not what mattered most to Vin. What mattered were the letters. They came by the thousands. From every state, from dozens of countries. Parents writing to say thank you. Teachers writing to say the movie had started important conversations in their classrooms. Autistic adults writing to say they finally felt seen and valued. One letter came from a teenager who said she had always felt ashamed of being autistic, but after seeing the movie, she felt proud for the first time. She wrote, "You showed me that I do not need to be fixed. I just need to be understood." Another letter came from a father whose son had not spoken in 3 years. After watching the movie, the boy looked at his father and said his first word in all that time, "Strong." The father wrote that he broke down crying right there in the theater. Vin read every single letter. He responded to as many as he could. Each one reminded him why he had fought so hard for this project. The movie won several awards. Best action film from various critics groups. Special recognition from disability rights organizations. Even some major award nominations. But the award that meant the most to Vin was one that was not televised. The Autism Society gave him their highest honor for advancing understanding and acceptance of autism. At the ceremony, several autistic self-advocates spoke about what the movie meant to them. One young woman said, "For the first time, when I tell people I am autistic, they do not just think of deficits. They think of the hero from the movie. That changes everything." Inspired by the success of the movie, Vin created a foundation. The foundation supported programs that helped autistic youth develop skills in filmmaking, writing, and other creative fields. He hired autistic consultants to run the programs. He made sure the foundation was actually led by autistic voices, not just neurotypical people talking about autism. The foundation gave scholarships, funded short films made by autistic filmmakers, and worked to get more autistic actors and crew members hired in Hollywood. Within 2 years, over 100 autistic young people had received support from the foundation. Hollywood noticed the success of Vin's movie. Other studios started developing projects with autistic characters. Some were good, some were not so good. But the conversation had shifted. Autism was no longer something Hollywood avoided. It was something they were finally starting to embrace, though still imperfectly. Vin continued making action movies, but he always looked for projects that had meaning beyond entertainment. He never forgot that his fame and platform could be used for more than just box office success. 3 years after the movie released, Vin got an invitation. The boy from Ohio was graduating from middle school. The father wanted to know if Vin could come to the graduation ceremony. Vin cleared his schedule and flew to Ohio. The graduation was in the school gymnasium, filled with proud families and nervous kids. The boy was now 13, taller and more confident than when Vin first met him. After the ceremony, the father pulled Vin aside. "I need to tell you something. Before your movie, my son wanted to be homeschooled. He could not handle regular school. But after seeing the movie, he asked if he could try going back. He said if Daniel could be brave, he could be brave too." "And?" Vin asked. "It has been hard sometimes," the father admitted. "But he did it. He made it through middle school. He has a couple of friends now. He is talking more. He still has bad days, but he also has good days." The movie gave him hope that things could get better. The boy came over to them. He was wearing his graduation gown and holding his diploma. He looked at Vin, made eye contact for a few seconds, and said, "Thank you for the movie. You kept your promise." Vin felt tears forming. "What promise?" "You said you would show the world that I can be strong." "You did." Later that evening, sitting on the flight back to Los Angeles, Vin thought about the journey that had brought him here. It had started with a simple letter in a pile of fan mail. A letter he almost did not read. A letter that had seemed like just another request from just another fan. But that letter had changed everything. It had opened his eyes to an entire community of people who deserved better representation. It had pushed him to fight harder than he had ever fought for a movie. It had forced him to risk his career and reputation on something that mattered. And in the end, it had given him the most important role of his life. Not playing a hero on screen, but being one in real life. Not for fame or money or awards, but for kids like the boy in Ohio who just needed someone to see their worth. The letter was framed on the wall of his office now. Sometimes when he was reading through new fan mail, he would look up at it and remember that you never know which letter, which person, which moment might change everything. Remember that the greatest power anyone has is not strength or speed or fighting skills. It is the power to listen, to care, and to use whatever influence you have to make the world a little bit better for someone else. That was the real legacy of the movie. Not the box office numbers or the awards or the sequels that would eventually come. The real legacy was in all the children who finally saw themselves as heroes, in all the families who felt less alone, in all the conversations that were started about acceptance and diversity and what it really means to be strong. And it all started with one letter from one father who loved his son and believed that the world needed to see what he saw, that his son was not broken or less than, that his son was a hero waiting for his story to be told. Vin had told that story, and in doing so he had discovered his own purpose, not just to entertain but to inspire, not just to be a star but to be a light for others. As the plane touched down in Los Angeles, Vin pulled out his phone. He typed a text to the father in Ohio. "Thank you for writing that letter. You changed my life. You changed thousands of lives. Never underestimate the power of reaching out and sharing your story." The father responded a few minutes later. "Thank you for listening." "Not everyone does," Vin smiled. He looked out the window at the city lights below. Somewhere down there, a child was watching his movie for the first time. Somewhere, a parent was crying tears of recognition and hope. Somewhere, someone was feeling less alone because of a story that had started with a simple letter. That was enough. That was everything. And the story was not over. It was just beginning.